Hello everyone, and welcome to this DeFi security webinar happening every month here on DSS. And today we have a very exciting and relevant topic: smart contract security and on-chain fraud prevention with AI. So buckle up. And right before we start, there is a very big announcement that I have to make. So DSS is coming back in November, Argentina. So mark your calendars because you are not going to want to miss this. Okay, now, as a quick intro, I'll be here, your moderator, Pablo, and I'm part of the core team at Spearbit and Cantina, where we're building a marketplace and an end-to-end security review platform, where we're also building AI-based tools to improve the security review process and tackle complex security challenges. Now, we have until 7, or my time. We have 1 hour, so there is time for questions. If you have any question, you are more than encouraged to drop it here in the chat, and we will ask them to our speakers. Now, I am honored to be joined by these two amazing speakers, Hani and Dan, who are working at the forefront of AI-driven security in Web3. So allow me to pass the mic to Hani for introductions. Hani.
Hi, I'm Hani Greenwell, founder of Olympics. We started in 2022. Our focus is on pre-deployment security. So anything ahead of the audit, just complementing the audit and trying to automate as many findings in-house as you can before going to a third party.
Thank you. And Dan, what about you?
Hi, so I'm Dan. I'm the co-founder and CTO at Hypernative. We focus on real-time security, so going from this smart contract perspective, so prevention of hacks and exploits based on real-time alerts, and also protecting wallets in real time, detecting frauds, phishing, scamming, stuff of that sort. So, and we're heavily invested in AI across the board, so we'd be happy to share.
Well, thank you very much to both of you for coming and being here. And now to the audience. So as you may know, or you may have heard, AI is changing the world in many different ways. So in fact, the compounded annual growth rate of the AI industry is roughly a 30%. And for DeFi, it's a whooping 53%. Now, one simple yet powerful example of the intersection between these two industries is enhanced developer productivity, such as writing smart contracts using AI assistants or agents with different tools such as Cursor or ChatGPT or you name it. Now, vibe coding is great, but it is not great to build secure applications and manage millions of user assets using these kind of techniques. So allow me to pass the mic to Hani, who will tell you more about the role that Olympics plays in smart contract development and vulnerability detection, and how all the pre-deployment part looks like here. So Hani, the floor is all yours.
Great, thanks, Pablo. So I'm just going to touch on the pre-deployment end of smart contract security and how AI integrates into that, as well as the productivity side, which Pablo also spoke about a bit. So in terms of actually writing your smart contracts or unit tests, that's a big role that AI can be very beneficial to. Being able to, let's say, accelerate your development timeline or leverage existing contracts to pull certain logic or certain types of contracts from, and that's where AI really accelerates. Where we see it fall short often is in security when you're relying on it to find vulnerabilities. So Olympics, the way that we leverage AI is we always build critical infrastructure first. So making sure that all of our tools are enterprise grade. And then on top of it, we'll layer AI for optimizing results, for making sure that we're giving the right types of information back to our developers, but we don't leverage AI solely to ensure that the tooling gives results. So what does that mean? Well, oftentimes you'll see people just put smart contracts into LLMs, and LLMs are built on pattern recognition. So something like a simple reentrancy, it's going to be able to detect. Something like a cross-contract reentrancy, it's not. So that's where you're going to see it fall short. And in security, you don't really have the luxury of being able to fall short, because if you miss one vulnerability, that could be the life or death of your protocol, right? So there's an interesting kind of balance that you have to hold when you're building security tooling. So very different than productivity, very different than unit tests, which of course are part of the security stack, making sure you have 80 to 100% test coverage before you go into an audit, making sure that you have written every piece of code, tested every piece of code. Very different than actually applying the tooling to the code and making sure that you've tested for all types of vulnerabilities. So smart contracts don't really reason about execution flow well. And that really matters because these vulnerabilities don't exist in isolation. They often emerge from complex interactions between multiple contracts and protocols. So in DeFi, execution flow isn't just about one contract's logic. It's about how it interacts with liquidity pools, lending protocols, price oracles, governance mechanisms, and external calls. And an LM just isn't capable of that. So I just want to start with leading with a level of caution when you're thinking about how you apply AI to your security stack, as not a give-all solution, or something that you can rely on solely without the right level of tooling and infrastructure underneath, because it will fall short. And again, even if it's a lower false positive rate, if you're missing one true positive, that's again the life or death of your company. So you really can't afford that, especially as a DeFi protocol or if you're interacting with any liquidity. So on the pre-deployment side, just to wrap that kind of up, AI really accelerates when you're writing your smart contracts, when you're writing your unit tests, and you're trying to hit those security productivity kind of benchmarks, like a certain amount of coverage or, robust test suite. Great. Leverage all you want. Right now, without proper infrastructure, using it for something like an audit is really problematic because you will 100% miss things. There's been a couple actually articles that have gone out about that. There's one, I wrote it down, by Yu Yang Du. I'm gonna butcher his name. I also have a hard name to pronounce. And he actually looks at leveraging the large language models that are most popular, like GPT-4. And he says that they have a high precision rate of 96.6, but a low recall of 37.8. So there's a tendency to miss vulnerabilities during detection. And that's a huge limitation, that abandoning existing tooling and real enterprise grade security level tooling, such as even if you're looking at like something like Certora, if you want to get that fancy where you're doing formal verification, or even a fuzzing tool, abandoning one of those and just moving to an LLM or an AI-based approach will mean you miss something. Maybe not the first time you run it, but the second. On a large level studies and on various papers that are coming out, we're seeing this continually reinforced. So you don't have to just take my word from it. You can actually read these papers. But the standard idea alone is that AI does work for a lot of things, and it does cover some security vulnerabilities, but not all. And in a world where we can't afford to miss one, you can't leverage it alone.
Amazing. Thank you very much. I guess that the audience is going to have like so many questions about this, especially since many security researchers have been trying to use large language models to find vulnerabilities on smart contracts, and not everything goes as it's expected. So, Dan, passing the mic to you.
Yeah. So okay. So I see Hani answered Kirsty's. Yeah. So I'm coming from Hypernative. I'm not sure if everyone knows us. We're running, as I said, real-time hack prevention. So we are not doing audits, and we are not searching for vulnerabilities. Instead, we're searching for attackers. I'll kind of describe, and I'll share like some few visuals soon. I'll just kind of connect. I'll improvise here. I'll connect to something that John Jeffries, I think, asked on the chat about whether circuit breakers are part of the pre-deployment security posture. So that actually segues into what we do. I think from what I'm coming from a background of AI and security, I was doing like endpoint protection in Web 2. If someone is, it's like a fancy word for antivirus for a corporate. So I think from what I see when we look at hacks that we detect, that sometimes the nuances are so subtle, and even coming from a background of AI, so I'm the most pro AI you'll probably meet. I think what Hani touched is a very kind of interesting point, because at the end of the day, you need to have very good representation of the features of the contract. And I think it's very easy because at the end of the day, the AI is there's always a question whether AI people will always say, does it learn or does it like memorize, right? So at the end of the day, there is probably to some extent a form of like a very sophisticated autocomplete, right? So I think it's very evident that you throw in contracts and it finds a lot of things. So the value in cutting the audit time is probably non-negligible. I don't know, like I'm not an auditor, I've never been, and I cannot speak to that. But I think there is a challenge and I think that's exactly what is Hani alluding for, in representing the primitives of the smart contract in a way which allow the AI to make more like interesting embeddings of the contract, if you want, if you're coming from that domain. So for example, like for people who are not from this domain of AI, so an embedding would be like in vector space, how would you make it so that a hotel and a motel would be similar enough in one context, but then again, in the other context, they're very different, right? Like you could be it could be a derogatory term for a hotel, but then again, if you're looking just about lodging, so hotel and motel are pretty close. So context and embedding of the meaning of things is very important, and I think in the context of an audit, it can be huge, right? Like whether like a small nuance can mean like a drain, and so I think that's a challenge, and I haven't seen any work done on the like intermediate representation, which I know that Olympics are kind of handling. So it's interesting to see how it will come with an AI. Going back to what we do, at least, and that's not what we do. So what we do is actually more has to do with what John has started here asking about circuit breakers. So while we don't do circuit breakers, we work on giving you the alert that would make a circuit breaker useful. So basically, we are looking at like smart contracts that are deployed across like not only EVM but like all EVM chains in real time. So we basically monitor them and like every transaction log and trace everything we do. So we parse it and then we understand that there was a smart contract deployment. It could have been a sophisticated one. It could have been just a naive one. And then we start analyzing the smart contract in real time. And while audits and like all the pre-audit, like the pre-deployment process focuses on the protocol that you want to protect, we focus on finding attackers. So our goal is to basically say, out of all the noise that you see on the blockchain, I'll give you like a random number, not random, like about 100K deployments per month only on mainnet. You can assume that number is vastly higher on BSC and Arbitrum and all the, I would say, cheaper chains, like L2s or side chains, doesn't really matter for that context. So we basically, to put it simply, we follow the attacker kill chain. Whenever we see a wallet that is behaving strangely, so it can be classically deploy an attack contract. Usually you would need the attack logic to be in a contract because it's not very common to attack a protocol with an EOA directly because you cannot do anything substantial. And at that point, we have a point of intervention because we can already analyze the contract. And I said, okay, that bytecode is malicious. The way we do it is with AI. So I can maybe show, well, kind of, well, 1 second, I'll move to, yeah. So I'll share a screen here. I'm terrible with Zoom. Sorry. And here, so, oh, wait. Share screen. Oh, wait. Where is that? Sorry, there is an issue here.
We have to improve security, but we also have to improve our share screen technology.
Look, to be honest, like it's okay, maybe I can just share the entire screen. Like I don't know why I cannot find the screen with the we just did that when we prepared and now I cannot see it. 1 second, I'll solve it. Sorry about that. 1 second. I'll just close all the other screen and make sure I remain on the right one, and then it will be easier. Now I'm closing all the Etherscan tabs, right? That's like what everyone does. Okay, let's try again. I'll try and share my screen. There we go. Found it. Okay, so do you see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is from our platform. It was this basically shows like that this was a hack that was a small hack that was I think it was public against Odus, if you're familiar with the protocol. It was a signature thingy issue. So what I wanted to show you is that like we're basically looking at contracts and we're scoring them in real time. So we give them a score here. You see my mouse here, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we basically do like and this is, by the way, a very tough one because there is no flash loan. Like it's easy when the attack is kind of price manipulation, thing that you see a lot. This attack, the reason I showed it is because it's very, very difficult to say, like if you see a contract, it was funded by Tornado Cash, it does a flash loan, it's like new, whatever, so you can suspect it. I can tell you from doing this for a long time, it's very noisy. But what I want to show here is that with ML, we can actually say, I don't know what was the attack at this point. Like our platform just kind of looks at it and says, okay, this is malicious, right? And when you see this like high maliciousness, there are very few out of the 100,000 that you have a month. It would be very, very, very few, like single digit, right? So it doesn't mean all of them would carry an attack, but it means that all of them require attention. So this time, to be honest, most time in those cases we are right, and AI gave a score of 0 to 1. Whoever does machine learning would know that if you actually do something, then it needs to be a continuous score. Otherwise, it's just like a few ifs, right? Like if you just change if you have a few conditions, you can bucket it into like 4 buckets, 6 buckets, 8 buckets, whatever. If you're actually running a model, which is what we do it's actually a neural network, the score is eventually continuous. So this one got a score of 60, which in our scheme means that it's still in the very high area. Like most would get 0.001. So when you're looking at the score distribution, you just see that everything that is above 0.5 or something, it's unusual, right? So for us, that was enough to alert on. So this is something I wanted to show you guys. I have more visuals coming. For us, AI basically helps sift through the noise. So we see hundreds of thousands of contracts across 40 chains, but then at the end of the day, I know you guys sometimes see guys and girls, but I'll just say guys, or English is not my native language. So sorry if I'm doing unaccepted expressions here. So oftentimes you can hear about, like this company alerted this company alerted that. So the way it's done, it's basically you need to have an accurate enough system that when you're looking at 40 blockchains across all transactions and everything that happens, you can know that, oh, this is not good. Like we need to get there and tell them. And we do it a lot. And actually, just a few days ago, I don't know if you guys, some of you are in East Security Group, there was an incident with 1inch. Oh yeah, Nathan, feel free to drop question. Yeah, sure. There was a few days ago, there was an incident with a 1inch solver, if people were in the loop of that. So actually behind the scene, there was a very interesting thing that happened because our system alerted on it. And I saw that it was me that took the alert. And I saw that the impacted party's solver of 1inch, and I know someone else who runs similar things. So I sent it to them. I don't know who the solver is. But if you look closely on chain, what you'll see is that the impacted party actually managed to remove funds before the hacker managed to take the rest of the funds. And the way it happened is that we detected it. Like, I personally wrote a Telegram message to someone. He wrote a Telegram message to them because he knew their contract and he told them to remove the funds. So that's actually a funny story. Someone shared it on East Security Group as well. So those things work. Those things can save us. And that's where it goes back to circuit breakers, because we already in real time saved millions of dollars for protocols, and we withdrew funds for asset managers that work with us. Based on, for protocols, it's circuit breakers. For asset managers, is automatic unwinding of positions. So if you have circuit breakers built into your protocol, you can configure monitoring platforms or like hack prevention platforms. Hypernative is I would say the biggest of them, but not the only one, to trigger an alert to prevent a hack. And it happened a lot of time before, and a lot of time we saved funds for people who are not customers, just like here. They are not our customers, but we managed to be fast enough to make them move the funds, even though, you know, if they were automatically configured with us, they would have been moving the funds automatically at like and saving almost everything. This pattern happened a lot. We have detections that preceded funds with 0 prior false positive to that protocol. So those things are actually, this post-deployment detection thing is a relatively new domain. Like all the companies that kind of started with that are basically were established in 2022. So it's growing. We work with more than 200 customers, so people are adopting this. But as it says, it requires some adoption, like from the customer side to say, okay, I want to be ready to pause my protocol. I want to be ready to unwind my position. How can small blockchain startup leverage AI for security without huge cost? So I will not speak on behalf of Hani, that is, I don't know to each his own pricing. I think that audits are, by any chance you guys found out where all the coin goes? Oh yeah, you're all the right questions. Okay, so for the small blockchain startups, so I'm not coming from an audit space, so I don't know. I just know that for a good question, like for a good reason, probably because they're very smart people who are doing that. Audits are not a cheap business. So I guess that if you're running an AI, and maybe Hani can give more details into that, you can at least like remove all the obvious things that you have in your contracts. I guess Pablo is from Spirit, and Hani can be more knowledgeable about the audit part. On our end, I think that for like the investment in a real-time like prevention platform, the prices are relatively not high. So I think if you can approach us, approach someone else, but you would find out that the prices are in expected value. If the ROI is very, very high, like if you basically save, the chances are that in the next 5 years, if you're running a protocol, you will get hacked, and the chances are that it would be for probably a few $100,000s at least. Almost everyone got hacked by now, maybe except for Uniswap. I mean, even like some side contract of like in Aave, they had like a periphery contract that got hacked, right? So, and that's Aave, and they have like the biggest security budget that you can think of for audits and stuff like that. So typically I can tell you that if the prevention platform saves you funds, like it was with this market maker, you would not be able, like it takes maybe 20 years to make a break even here. So if you basically if they had the platform ready, they would not be able to be with us for a long enough time to make it so that it would be unworthy for them. The prices, because we're not actually putting people like an auditor. We have a platform, it's a SaaS platform, so the prices are considerably lower. And then if one time you got rescued, the funds that were rescued would probably pay for the platform for like 20 years. So that's basically the make or break for prices. I think that for audit, maybe Pablo, you can add, maybe Hani, that it can save you from like the stupid hours that are spent, right? Like on things that you can just mistakes that are common and you can just remove.
Yeah, I can address all those points. So the first thing that Dan touched on is cost. Of course, it's the thing that people think a lot about, especially as smaller stage teams. We've all been there. We all are there. It's really hard to allocate money to anything security oriented because you have to also allocate money to developer spend, to everything else within the ecosystem. What's important to think about is how big the attack surface is in the ecosystem that we're operating in versus the Web2 ecosystem, and how small our security expenditure is in comparison. So if you think about like a Web2 org, they're spending probably more than you are, average company, on security. And yet what they stand to lose is a lot less. And because security isn't driven by regulatory like it is in the Web2 environment, these decisions are your own pretty much. So the only thing that you're really mandated to do is get an external audit. Now, 90% of exploit contracts have undergone an audit. So unfortunately, that's not foolproof. And if you're responsible, you'll know that you need to implement multiple layers of the stack. So like Dan said, they sit on the post-deployment side, we sit on the pre-deployment side. Something also interesting I think Dan did was kind of go through his tools. I spoke about this before at a high level, but not how it actually equates and translates to Olympics. Not all of our tools leverage AI. So we actually have a free tool, a static analyzer. It has a free and a premium version. So if you want like to detect something like cross-contract reentrancy, signature replay, the more complex and nuanced vulnerabilities, you're going to need to upgrade to our premium plan. We have a startup plan. So for smaller stage teams, under a certain amount of Solidity developers, really, really affordable. Obviously, we grow with you. So as you grow and your team grows, the plan will grow. But our free version alone, 30% of Solidity developers are utilizing. It's because we do have a more complex and enterprise grade IR, intermediate representation, that allows us to understand your code and where vulnerabilities can exist. So we do benchmark best on market in terms of static analysis. Going into Starting Olympics, I thought we could leverage AI to get better results. Turns out the answer is for certain tools, you should stick to rules-based for the reasons I had mentioned previously, which is like you can't afford to miss one vulnerability. And if you're layering AI on top, perhaps you will. So you need to be very careful how you're using AI. Now, in terms of other tools like our automated unit test generation, that's a perfect use of AI because we can actually train on existing contracts. Majority of contracts are forked from other contracts, and we can get your branch coverage up. Leverage also existing tools like Forge or something and target branch coverage as our North Star metric and get you up before an audit. So that's important pre-deployment. So there are places where, and you can kind of do that on your own. It's going to be a lot more complicated and you're not going to have the same training set and everything, but you could try using existing LLMs for that. Then there's another piece, which is, how robust is your test suite ahead of an audit? That again, you can use like mutation testing, which is another tool we offer. If you look at the PenPy exploit that happened a couple months ago, would have been prevented had the team used our mutation testing tool because they missed a reentrancy test. So the robustness of your test suite does directly translate. Again, not AI specifically, but there are pieces where AI plays and pieces where AI doesn't. If you're really, security oriented team, again, you could be using formal verification. Now, could AI write the specs for that? Well, even humans sometimes mess up on the specs. So I think there's a similar dialogue as there is in like software development. It can help enhance the development flow and speed it up, but not necessarily replace, especially security researchers or people internally on your team. What I think you really need to push for is a budget for someone internally on your team to cover both pre-audit checklist of making sure from a North Star perspective, you're automating as much of the audit as you can before you go and rely on a third party. Not because these third parties aren't amazing, but because any auditor will tell you they have 1 week. They didn't write the code. They didn't author the code. They're just trying to understand it. If you leave a bunch of low hanging fruit or something tools can detect or you internally can detect, you're not giving them the space and time to find the more complex vulnerabilities that humans are aware of, that they're spending time researching, right? So you're neglecting your own protocol. Then there's a post-deployment side. Again, you're not going to, and I'm not going to speak for Dan, but like your team does, if you don't have this software in place, there's no one positioned to be monitoring everything and looking for, so maybe you'll get lucky and they'll alert you and you can pull out your funds at a certain point. But if you're not leveraging tool to optimize your security stack as a whole, you're really setting yourself back. And then I know Spearbit probably said is coming out with some tools. I actually don't know a lot about those tools, but knowing Spearbit and a lot of our customers use them as an auditor, they're exceptional. So there probably are a bunch of tools in that stack that also can help accelerate your audit timeline, accelerate your security, just overall posture, right? And And I feel like there was another question I didn't address because I'm a little
I,
ADD.
I can catch it up for you. You were talking
Yeah.
about LLMs, right? And one of the questions that one of the users had is that if LLMs are actually, are they learning or are they just memorizing? And how, for example, you at Olympics, how are you folks using LLMs? Are they memorizing vulnerabilities or are you teaching them about vulnerabilities?
Right. So the training data is teaching them whatever you're feeding them. And so, but majority of LMs are just pattern based. What's interesting and what we're seeing application of right now is agents. So actually leveraging agents to try and work together to find vulnerabilities, potentially write exploit contracts. But again, these agents are subject to the training data that you give them. So it's often, and I've seen some cool startups spin up that are doing that. Of course, every team has some version of that going on. The question again comes back to accuracy. What kind of results are you getting? How many vulnerabilities are you getting? And the way we benchmark it internally is very simple. I say, take the same GitHub commit that they gave the auditor and that they gave us and run the tools, and what percent of the audit did we find? That's the best way to benchmark it right now. How are you comparing to the human, and what can you take off the human's plate? Because then, most teams aren't getting one audit, they're getting 3, 4, if they can afford it, or maybe 2 if they're an early stage team. But what if 2 got you like 50% more findings because you swapped things off the auditor's plate and they had time and space to think about things because they are humans, they're exceptionally valuable, and you know that because you're paying so much for their time. The good auditors are hard to come by, and you want to really make sure you juice the most out of their time. So that's kind of how we measure it at Olympics, just what percentage of audit findings. Very simple, very straightforward. So you can actually use these agents to loop through different tool findings if you have proper tools and infrastructure to write exploit contracts and actually try and produce the audit findings. There's different ways and implementations that different teams are doing it. I think majority of teams are experimenting with agents. We've been experimenting with agents actually since 2022, but it does cap. So for example, Ethernaut, which is a very common like Web3 CTFs, they're not like that complicated, but even to a year and a half ago, agents would have passed all Ethernaut challenges. At least internally, we did that, but that's not enough because that's a good start, but it's not enough. So you can look at how they begin to work, but they need the corresponding and correlated tooling and infrastructure to really optimize the results.
That's amazing. And for all those people that are not actually in the AI security space, they may have heard about agents and agentic behavior. Would you be able to elaborate or explain them a bit more of what's the difference between doing an audit with an LLM and doing an audit with an agent?
Right. Again, I would not ever put your audit in an agent's hands. Maybe just as part of your internal process, if you have some agentic tooling or something like that, that's great, but do not negate the fact that you need a human, you need a third party to audit. And again, I've yet to see agents that really successfully find a high percentage of vulnerabilities, because a lot of them rely on tools that are open source that aren't built properly. So for example, you look at a tool like Slither, which is amazing, but it's amazing for what it is, an open source tool, and there's been amazing contributions, but it's not going to hit the same accuracy as an enterprise grade tool, just because it isn't built with the same infrastructure, the same IR, the same ability to understand code paths. So if your agent is using that tool, it's limited to the capabilities of that tool. Does that make sense? So if your question was, do LLMs, what would you use so I would use any security tooling that can support internally, but you can't negate that external process. And then you as a company need to evaluate which tool stack is best for your company, and you should run technical evaluations across all the different companies. I can't speak to Octane Security. I saw in the chat, like, you are the founder, the CEO, the CTO, whatever of your company. You need to do a real evaluation. You need to take the GitHub commit that you gave to an auditor. You need to take both tools and you need to run them, and you need to see what results are best for your team, and then choose the provider that fits for you. I know every provider who's working in this ecosystem on my side, on Dan's side, there's a lot of really smart people, and we all exist because we have customers and people who trust us. So all these companies are doing great things. You need to, from a technical perspective, evaluate which finds the most findings and at the most accuracy, and do that technical evaluation. You'll get the answer yourself. Of course, each team is going to say my product is the best. I'll say that. Dan will say that about his team as well. And of course, because we pour our hearts and souls into it, you can do that technical evaluation. You can see for yourself.
Yeah, benchmarking is certainly not that obvious and something very big that should be standardized, especially now as AI security applications are being developed.
Yeah, we send out benchmarks to all of our customers in a sales process, so they can actually like evaluate those findings on their own and then cross compare them with their own audit and any other tooling.
Oh, that's amazing. And another question for you. So, what are some real world examples of AI catching vulnerabilities before the audits that you've had?
Okay, so like I said, the agentic component with the Ethernaut is a great example. But we're not actually using we're using AI in interesting components. Like for example, on top of our fuzzing solution, we have AI and that'll find, like, for example, the hedgy finance exploit would have been prevented using our fuzzer, but actually with the AI or without the AI layer. So I'm skeptical to, again, pin it just on AI, because AI isn't finding these things, it's optimizing the results for finding these things, or it's running through the findings of existing tools and infrastructure and finding, where is this a true positive? Where is this a false positive? Does that make sense? So like the AI is the helper, it's the hand to the robust security tools or to the robust security team internally that's going through the existing components. I think if you talk to a pure AI company, which there are a couple in the space I've seen, they might have a different answer. But what I've seen so far on market is like what they're finding is, again, similar to the limitations of what existing open source tools could find. Like you're telling me you can find a reentrancy attack with AI. Okay, I can also find that if I run Slither. I can find that if I run Olympics. When do we need AI and when do we not need AI? On the post-deployment side, you always need AI, right? On the pre-deployment side, I'd be careful how much you're throwing that in for unnecessary purposes versus necessary purposes, and making sure that, again, your accuracy and your benchmarking is higher rather than like, oh, I used AI.
Thank you. Dan, some people were wondering about scam preventions. How does Hypernative handle those cases?
Yeah, so I will reshare my screen. Okay, so let me mess this up again. Not sure why it's so difficult. Like sometimes I click share and it shows me like a different window. Okay, let's do that trick again. Oh. Share and okay. Oh, there we go. All right. Okay. So phishing. Yeah. So well, maybe I'll put the run word first. So definitions, like someone who studied anything in computer science or math likes. So far we've discussed like hacks and exploits, which is something that now getting the benefit of AI, and it's mostly targeting smart contracts. Phishing and scamming targets individuals usually. You would also say that the Bybit hack is social engineering, but at the wide scale, when people say phishing and scamming or fraud, they usually mean targeting individuals. So in the context of this conversation, phishing would more talk about like things that I would say, okay, so basically it's making the victim trick into compromising themselves. The difference between that and I would say a fraud is that when you have an investment fraud, so someone would say, okay, send me money and I'm putting it into like a mining operation and like mining, crypto mining, right? So that would be a typical fraud. Or an investment fraud is that you'll send crypto, they'll invest it for you in somewhere. They'll show you a screen very nice with all the like graphs and things, and you'll be like, oh, I'm up like 30%. Let's go. So you're willingly sending it there, and you're sending it to an actual thing that you believe is real, but just at the end of the day, they will not send you the funds back. So it's more like binary option scam that used to run like years ago. So phishing would be the notorious malicious approval, malicious permit, malicious whatever. So you'll go to a website, you want to claim an airdrop, you'll go to a website, you think that you clicked on a link at Discord. That's what we would call phishing. Examples would be address poisoning. So examples in this conversation would cover address poisoning, which is if people are not familiar, is when people are bombarding your address with like sophisticated transactions that come to mimic addresses that are similar to addresses you previously interacted with. And they have various ways of doing that, but basically they'll just like randomly generate they'll generate addresses like brute force until they come to an address which looks like something that on Etherscan would be similar to an address that you had prior interaction with. And the key to success there is to timely place it in your timeline of Etherscan, right? If you're like just sent some people would say, oh, like Pablo, I need to send you like $1 million. So I'll make a test transaction. Yeah, now he's happy. I don't have $1 million. I'll send you like a test transaction, and those are supposedly they gamble that it looks like a test transaction. I'm sending you a little bit. They see I have 1 million. They see a new address like Pablo. I'll send $100, right? And then they'll put their transaction within there, and then they hope that I'll copy the transaction, and then I can send it to their address. So we'll show an example of this. Thus, we call it like Drainer as a service. So if you're all familiar with like Pink Drainer, Medusa Drainer, all those infrastructures. So basically, it's scamming that works on. At the end of the day, it's malicious URLs that they'll put the links in Discord servers, in hijacked crypto accounts, replying to existing crypto accounts that are like high fidelity, like a Lido account, and they'll put a lot of comments about like Lido airdrop coming, and they'll hope that people are coming. MEV tutorials, very common, that people would go, oh yeah, like look at this MEV bot, you'll do this, you'll do that, and pig butchering, which is a different thing, and we'll cover this. Address poisoning. So like I said, it works by sending tiny transaction. It has to be tiny because they're spamming all the blockchain with this. To whoever follows that, he knows the spam. So for example, let's say that the victims, like moving the whole Zoom widgetry around is really annoying. Okay, so we'll have a victim real address is this one, and then the other fake address would be something like this. So they'll kind of run addresses until they get something which looks good, and this actually looks not bad. And then they'll start bombarding at timely places. So a very famous case was that someone, you guys don't see it, but they keep moving the widgetry around because I don't see the presentation. Okay, so someone basically sent fake transactions to a wallet that they anticipated is about to move a lot of money in WBTC. So that's a nice case because you could see on chain that the attacker gained $70 million in WBTC, but then they returned it. They were probably scared or whatever, but they returned it. So what you can see here is, so you see, basically they are sending here, and we can see the fake phishing one has a similar, 1 second. Yeah, so you can see that D9A91, so you can see it here, right? Like the same thing. Obviously, it's not the same address, but when you're looking at Etherscan, you might be confused. So they're basically like, this is our victim. So they sent here some test transaction or something. They slipped their transaction here, and then that's the hack here, and we can see it in this very sad picture. So basically the victim, this one, sent, now it's called fake phishing. At that time, it was not fake phishing. It was the address I previously showed. Wait, oh. Okay, go back. Oh, here, yeah. So it was this one. And then, of course, post-mortem, they label it fake phishing. Yeah, so that's address poisoning. I'm not sure it's very AI related, but it's phishing, and it's something that we detect and we help customers avoid. But it costs millions every month. We see it all the time. So never copy anything from Etherscan. And by the way, Etherscan are doing a good job by like highlighting that when you're trying to copy, they're telling you don't copy. So they're trying, but again, people are doing it. Okay, I'm not really asking any questions, but it's not this type of medium. So if you have questions, just write them, and I'll try and kind of work my way through them. Draining as a service. So like I said, basically the black market offers like automatic wallet draining. The way it works is that you get the contracts that are kind of, it's a kit that you can work with. So your job is mostly to like deploy the kit and make users come to your fake website and grant a permit and approval or whatever to your to the contracts that you deployed. And thus the draining as a service would basically like skim the token, the wallet, once it gets the approval. So usually the users are kind of they just see the wallet drained, they don't know how it happened. They're like, oh no, I was on this website, and then they realize it was a scam website. I have to say that over time, because I'm seeing those a lot, they're really, really good. Like the websites that you're going, some of them look like crap, but a lot of them are really, really good. So like people can say, yeah, who falls for it? Like, I mean, honestly, the website themselves look good. I guess the ways to reach them is not it's kind of the same. It's like links in email, hijacked Discord servers, fake support, all those things. So again, less AI, but very effective. Example for fake support, right? So those are like the things. So you can see that they will basically say, OpenSea IO, blah, blah, blah. And then you can actually have the wallet drainer here, right? So it's a very, like, you can see how Discord can help those guys do their job. Yeah, and here we see something from like how it looks on the dark markets. So basically, if you're looking for versions of, and this thing is ran like a software company. It's not some garage thing of a script kiddie. So they have versions and they have new features, and you can really see like so now we have TRC 10 added, TRC 20 supporting Ledger, but like, so it's very, very industrialized, and it's like tens and millions of dollars a month, and it's probably like easily you're talking about like $100 million a year that is drained from customers. So and look, like, get excited, the Solana drainer will be released soon. Yeah, so this is from like a forum, like a releasing of Angel Drainer version 8.2. You can see it's an actual business. Yeah, so this is kind of the same, showing how it looks like from like a black market. So someone is looking for a MetaMask drainer, and they specify the they already have a product manager, as we see. So basically they want to kind of something that does this. Yeah, and this is another type of scam, which is like a MEV scam. It's still going on. We still see this. People go on YouTube. They say, they can make easy money in crypto. Now they're slightly technical. They're for those of us, because we're all mid-curvers at the end of the day. But to the point of this discussion, they're technical enough that they would be like, they would love smart contracts and the whole tech and everything, and MEV and like arbitrage and whatever. But they're not savvy enough security-wise to understand that it's a complete like attack vector. And they'll kind of they'll run through a guide. If you look good on YouTube, they'll explain and whatever, and then they'll like copy paste the code that the YouTube has in the comments. But in the code, they'll have something like send all the funds to basically the operator of the MEV scam. So they'll deploy a MEV contract that does a sophisticated algorithm, and the sophistication is basically taking the funds away from the user. Okay, pig butchering. So pig butchering is like an umbrella term for fraud, which is a bit more, I would say, elaborated than the drainers. So all those frauds that we covered so far, most of them, they're not interacting with you. They're like spamming at large, and they hope that people fall for it. So you do like a website, you start spamming links, you take off a Discord server. You don't actually have like bi-directional interaction with your user. Spamming addresses with like fake, like small amounts in poisoning, I think is not something which is considered bi-directional communication. Pig butchering, different thing. So what they do here, they basically do psychological manipulation. They build trust with you. They reach you in like traditional mediums like WhatsApp, Telegram, phone calls. Just the other day, someone told me that they got approached actually two times in the past 2 weeks. That's probably a trend. Like Binance would call you, someone from Binance, supposedly, not the real Binance, and they'll say, we found your attack, like your contact details and username and password to your account on the internet. It's important that you change everything now and remove the funds, because if we saw it, then attackers can see it, and they will. So the story makes sense, and they just do it to many like Binance customer. I don't know how they reach the Binance customer, but they do have ways, probably in dark markets, that they buy data. And they come after you with a Binance registered number, and they'll have a lot of things that will build trust. And they'll say, okay, so someone from like support will call you, and then they'll hang up the call. Someone will call you. So it's a very elaborated scheme. It's not something which is address poisoning, and it's okay, yeah, so never copy from Interscan. And they'll stress you. They'll say, look, from experience, money can be stolen in the next 24 hours. So I recommend we'll start. They'll be calm, but very kind of affirmative. They'll build trust with you. Everything eventually leads to you sending money to them. That's the end of it. Either sending money to a wallet that they know the SID to, or sending money to them. That doesn't really matter, like all the story. But the thing is that it would be a vastly different proposition than the phishing that we saw. So crypto lover scam, this is common from what we see in Asia. So you would basically build kind of a trust with someone mostly romantic over months, and then they will persuade them to either invest in a fake exchange or send them funds or whatever. But basically it's a trap, and they'll never return the funds. The ML comes in the regard that this looks just like random transfers, but for us at Hypernative, we are running like real-time ML on data, and we're able to surface those patterns. Us as humans, it would be very hard, but we're analyzing like the chain. We are seeing how those things look. We built an internal graph representation of the blockchain, which is a difficult task because the blockchain is huge, and we are able to surface interactions which look suspicious. And then when we investigate the addresses, we suddenly see external corroborations of Reddit or chain abuse or whatever. So we know our method is working, and we're able to actually surface clusters of fraud that are pig butchering, that are happening to various, we see it happen, affecting the same cluster can affect like Coinbase users and Binance users and OKX users and whatever. So it's probably the same organization, and they just run different schemes. We sometimes see that we can have different addresses under the same cluster. The cluster is an AI cluster, so it basically means addresses that have interaction with them in a meaningful way. So me depositing into a Binance address and Pablo withdrawing from a Binance address is not meaningful, but me and Pablo exchanging funds all the time is meaningful. It probably means that we are connected in a way, even if we're not the same person. So we managed to create clusters that we believe in high fidelity or scam clusters. And then you find one address from the cluster, and then you suddenly end up here. So we managed to go to these places by searching them. We scrape and we search and we do a lot of that work. And then, so this guy is basically complaining that, he was fooled by this lady, which is probably not a lady. So that's the thing. And this is another example. Yeah, so she's saying she's a jewelry specialist from London. The stories are kind of the same all the time. Yes. Okay.
Sorry for interrupting.
Yes.
Just to be
Ah,
exact,
yeah.
just to be
The
aware
time
of
flies.
time.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
And actually, well, if anyone else has any other question regarding how AI can be applied to smart contract review, security, or fraud prevention and even detection, then feel free to drop your question here on the chat and we'll ask it right away. But Dan, in the meantime, now that you asked that, machine learning models find meaningful, patterns and connections between address exchanges, right? So if, for example, you, I, and Annie are exchanging, crypto, then that's going to be detected. But how would it work when a black hat, a hacker, now uses Tornado Cash? Does it break, like this graph model?
Yeah. So Tornado Cash is yeah. So the thing so it depends on what you're trying to detect, right? So if you're looking to hack a smart contract, so Tornado Cash is a popular option. I would say it's like on the probably more than half the hacks are originated from Tornado Cash. However, Tornado Cash has a lot of legitimate use cases, right? Like legitimate in the sense that it just provide you privacy. It doesn't have to lead to a hack. The AI, we haven't tried to, I would say, de-anonymize yet, because it was not on our it was not yet something that we were interested in trying. But I know that, working I'm part of SEAL, so we're doing a lot of like emergency work and stuff. So I'm seeing people who do that for a living, like de-anonymizing or trying to understand like who is behind the withdrawal from Tornado Cash. I think Zach XBT is more famous to it, like on a Twitter level, right? And he's doing like an amazing job. And so you can see that there is a pattern here, right? Like there are things that you can do. Basically, at the end of the day, it's mostly about amounts and timings and matching them. So I'm not sure if this is like an AI thing, but I think it's a data challenge, because like technically for Bybit, for example, Tornado Cash is meaningless. You cannot launder like $1 billion with Tornado Cash if the entire protocol is, I don't know, a few hundreds of millions or like 1 billion. So it would be very obvious, right? Like if you're putting $1 billion in $100 million pool and you're extracting like $1 billion from there, so 900 million is certainly yours. Yeah, so I think AI there would be, I'm not sure if that's like where we applied. I think it's very nicely fits in detecting fraud and phishing and the drainers and everything. Like we detect drainers and phishing and scams and fraud. Like we're running real-time AI model, graph models, bytecode models, and it's working. Like we are seeing it working with great accuracy and coverage. So I think it's very promising. And we already have people, like I would say, benefiting from it. It's always sad to talk about it this way, but yeah.
So
how do we implement?
Very quickly, since we have like 1 minute left, how do you implement prevention when dealing with suspicious addresses? Do you pre-filter these transactions before execution, or do you preemptively block these highly suspicious wallets?
Yeah, so it depends on the customer. So if we're talking about hacks and exploits, so we have, and I'll try and maybe also answer a few other questions that were similar. We basically have an integration in the platform that you can issue a transaction upon a hypernative detection, which is high fidelity and an imminent threat to a smart contract. So you can basically in like 1 minute just set it up. There is an EOA that is managed in the platform, and you can basically say that EOA, you grant it a pause role in your protocol, and you just pause the protocol automatically. You can be asleep. It doesn't really matter. If you're an asset manager where you're working on an unwind position, so you can like unwind and swap to whatever, so that can also be triggered. The important part is when to trigger. That's what we actually specialize in. For wallets, when we integrate with consumer wallets, so at the end of the day, non-custodial consumer wallets cannot make you not sign a transaction. You can sign at the end of the day if you want. However, we work with enterprise customers, consumer wallets, and basically like all type of wallets that you can think about, to give them either like make us as part of like a guardian, or like us, like we are signing, so we can actually sign with you. Of course, you can kick us out and say we don't want it, but that's an option that we do. And then if we don't sign, that cannot go through, so we can block. or that we present you a very, very evident, like, don't do that, right? And at the end of the day, we just hope that you would listen. So that's how we do a prevention side currently. We have future plans, but that's for now. Because at the end of the day, the most important is prevention from our perspective. All we do eventually comes down to, like, it has to prevent. Otherwise, it's less interesting.
Well, thank you really very much for your answer, and everyone in also for tuning and being here with us. This is more than a 1 hour topic to be discussing and talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm very sure that this conversation is gonna keep on going in one way or the other. In the meantime, keep an eye out for the DeFi Security Summit Twitter for when the next webinar is gonna happen, and do register for November. Don't forget about that. And again, thank you very much, Hani and Dan, for coming and sharing all that information with us. Everyone, have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, Pablo.
Bye.